First deployment, loved the breaching job, and it was just bliss. It was so much fun. I mean, my job wasn't a job before, but dude, it was like being in an amusement park. I was like, okay, how can I will get into anything? That's all I thought about. I was like, oh, this is so much fun. You learn from stuff from lockpicking to getting through nuclear walls that are 21 feet thick. I mean, that's the breacher's job, is to get through anything. Doors, windows, walls, through the ground. It doesn't matter.
From this point on in your life, you view yourself as a breacher.
As a breacher,
I mean, your dog's name is
I was
Breacher.
known as the breacher. I was like anything. I was the breacher. I was the breacher guy. Breacher Eddie. I was really good at the job, and the reason why was because I really enjoyed it and I had a lot of fun with it. It was just a passion.
Eddie, what do you feel now?
A lot of peace. We're back.
Hotel. So this is, what year is this?
This is second deployment, so it's probably 03, 04.
Okay.
I think my first one was 02, so this is probably tail end of 03 or 04.
You get back.
Possibly 05.
I think 03 was the Iraq invasion. So
possibly. Okay, so it's 05.
Okay.
It's 05.
Okay. 2005. And this is that super busy time where guys are coming back from deployment. You immediately start training up for the next one.
Yeah. There was definitely a shift in the teams. I mean, I definitely just got there, obviously, but I can just tell from guys that have done 3 or 4 deployments, like things are changing. So, you know, instead of like not knowing where you're going to go and you got to train for everything, it's like, okay, we got Iraq and Afghanistan and maybe some other little things, but they kind of fall in, you know. So the mindset and the perspective is like, okay, this is what we concentrate on for obvious reasons.
Right. Yeah. You're not diving.
Yeah.
Kind of the time in the workup where individual schools are an option for you.
Yes.
And you find your place here.
Yeah. So my first deployment, I loved the breaching job. So I was the secondary breacher. I would help with charges. I never was a breacher. I didn't go to the school because you have to go to the school first. And then finally, obviously, I was like, hey, when I got back, I got it set that that was at the first school I go to. So I went to that, and it was just bliss. It was so much fun. All of a sudden, I mean, my job wasn't a job before, but dude, it was like being in an amusement park. It was like fun. I was like, okay, how can I will get into anything? That's all I thought about. I was like, oh, this is so much fun. I mean, from not at the school per se, but you learn from stuff from lockpicking to getting through nuclear walls that are 21 feet thick. So you learn ship hatches. You learn, I mean, that's the breacher's job, is to get through anything, no matter what it is. So doors, windows, walls, it doesn't matter. Through the ground, it doesn't matter.
And I think from this point on in your life, you view yourself as a breacher.
As a breacher,
I mean, your dog's name is
I was
Breacher.
known as the breacher. I was like anything. I was the breacher. I was the breacher guy. Breacher Eddie. Like, you would just say that's just what I would do. I mean, I had the opportunity to do other things, but I didn't want to. I was really good at the job, and the reason why was because I really enjoyed it and I had a lot of fun with it. It was just a passion. So, but yeah, that was it. Breaching.
So around this same time period in this workup, somebody comes into your life,
yes,
who kind of changes you.
Yeah. We were at AP Hill doing some Humvee land warfare, like heavy weapons training, and the new guys were coming in. So I was a new guy last time. I had 1 deployment under my belt, starting my second platoon. And then we had like 3 or 4 new guys come in, and one of our chiefs was walking around just kind of showing where they were going to be staying, because we had like, you know, certain buildings with our racks or / beds in them. And they came in, and I introduced myself. I was putting something, because I was the leading petty officer, the troop petty officer or whatever. So I would get the words from the higher up guys, and I would spread it to the rest of the guys. So I was putting it up on the whiteboard where we put all our words, just so guys could just walk in, because everyone's doing different stuff. And you can't find people. So just you put it up, everyone knew, like, hey, we go to this whiteboard to get the word. So I was putting the word up there, and they came in, and I went over and introduced him. And there's just something about him. I was like, man, he's like a really cool. For one thing, he's like super good looking. Like he's like Brad Pitt's brother. but like it just kind of like through that training, we got hooked up in the same team, I think it was. And we just became really good friends. Like it was just like, we just clicked. Like we just had the thing. The other guys that came were awesome too, but just for some reason Jason was like,
it's that
like,
chemistry.
It was my dude, man. So, and then as the second, we started hanging out more and more and more. And then our second deployment came and they needed a couple volunteers to go to Afghanistan, and I'd never been. So my hand was like the first one up. We need volunteers to go to boom. I didn't care what it was. It didn't matter. I was like, I'm going, I want to go. I'm going to go. Just because I've never been. And so I did that. There was like four of us from our platoon that went. Everyone else went right back to the green zone to do more PSD stuff.
Okay.
To help, like they called it a mentorship, to help the incoming forces, the Iraqs and other people that are going to be there for a while, to train them up on it. It's kind of a crappy job, but obviously necessary. So I went to Afghanistan, and I was only there we were there for 2 months, and then we were supposed to be there. I was supposed to do 3 months and then 3 months in Iraq. That was the plan. So they decided to move all the SEALs out of that part of Afghanistan. So I was part of that crew. So we moved back to Iraq after 2 months.
But while you're in Afghanistan, you had your first firefight.
I had my first firefight, if you want to call it a fire. I was shot.
You pulled the trigger.
I pulled the trigger, yeah. So we did this thing called I think it was a med calf or whatever. So we went up this valley, and we took like medications to give to the village people, not the music group. Right. And we always heard like, hey, when you're going up the valley, you're not going to get attacked. It's when you come back down.
They're waiting for you.
That's when they're waiting for you. And sure enough, they're waiting for us. We started getting past the narrow part where it's like the houses on the side of like the little makeshift dirt road / drainage with our Humvees coming down. And as soon as it kind of went up into a field, we kind of pulled out. We did a rally point where we all just kind of got in a perimeter, which is a circle, to watch our 360 security. And started hearing shots in a tree line that was probably maybe 100 yards to my left. If the Humvees here was over here, and I was up on the turret, and me backtrack. And before we went out this, it was Army Humvees. So we're joining this Army group to do this. So there was like me and my buddy Goose. There was 2 of us that joined this convoy. And of course, we volunteered. They're like, hey, we need a turret gunner. Like he was just going to go. He's like, hey, they need a turret gunner. I was like, I'll go. Yeah, it was just like,
not your job, but it was a shot at doing something.
Yeah, I'm good at machine guns. Like, let's do it. So I was up in the turret, and I had a 240 Golf, which is a 7.62 like M60 on steroids. That's a freaking phenomenal weapon platform. But we like when the teams, like if it was a teams, like the Navy SEAL Humvee, we'd have like a nice ammo can with like 200 rounds perfectly layered, and then we'd have other cans stationed right behind you. So if this can goes empty, you drop it, somebody hands it to you, or you pick it up, and it's back at it. They had the old like canvas bags from like Vietnam with like cardboard that held 100. So if it gets wet, the cardboard gets distorted. Like it's just the linked rounds get caught in the cardboard. I was like, are you freaking serious? So I was like scrambling last minute to find like decent stuff to like make sure like if we get a firefight, like I'm ready to go. So we did that.
That's a really good example of different budgets. Right.
Different budgets, yeah, and people were fine with that setup. I'm like, this is why people die,
right?
Because you're not preparing for goodness right here. You're preparing to fail, like you're a moron. What is Benjamin Franklin's? And I use this all the time. If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. Plain and simple. It's like with emergency management, like stocking up on food, whatever it may be, training, shooting, self-defense. You're just waiting to fail. It's going to come and get you. So I was like, holy crap, like what the heck? So I did what I could, made it a little bit better. And I'm like, I know we're going to be getting in a firefight. I know it. I just like had that sense. Sure enough, we come back to, they opened up, and it was just a couple pop shots from an AK. And we were traveling with Iraqi national,
daylight.
Yeah. It was like early morning, probably like 8 or 9. It was Afghanis. They were with us. They were kind of all running out. Like one was probably taking a shit out there. One was probably doing whatever else out there. And they're running back. One guy got shot in his ass or his upper leg. So I just took my 240 and just kind of sprayed rounds into the tree line where I knew the bad guys were, just to like get some covering fire to get those guys out. And then I had the best vantage point because I was up in the turret. So I could see obviously higher than, and Goose, who was kind of running our vehicle, was the vehicle commander. It's like, what do you see? I was like, man, we got high ground, so we should probably move over here. She's like, good call. So we moved over to get like a better vantage point and kind of like set up an L on them. And by that time, we saw them take off into the buildings, and there was innocents over there, so there was no more shooting. And then we just decided to pull out because we had one guy wounded. We were set to extract or exfil to get out of there. They were just like, all right, they thought it was farmers, like, hey, get the heck off our property. But after we're giving you medicine, right?
Right.
So,
right.
But that was my first time. It was a rush. It was cool, but it's definitely not the same as like being shot at. Like being in the vicinity shot at and being shot at are two different things. And that came the following deployment.
And at this, the marriage is really starting to show cracks.
The marriage is really starting to show cracks at this point.
2 babies at home.
2 babies at home, and I'm definitely guilty. I'd be the biggest hypocrite and liar to say it was my wife's fault. She's definitely. I've learned that in a marriage, both parties are 100% responsible. So we both failed. But I definitely, like, me being gone all the time and her dealing with it. She was drinking, she was doing other things. But yeah, it was, and I didn't help.
You were addicted to your job.
I was addicted to my job. So we were both addicted to something. I was not a good husband. I was not a strong husband. I was not leading my family the way I should be. I failed that family. I take full responsibility for that failure. But at the same time, I look at where I am right now with my family that I have now, that I am not failing, that I am the leader, and I learned from those mistakes. Like I've talked about all the time with guys that I mentor or try to bring up, and is like the failures. You have 2 choices. You can look at that failure and be down and play the victim, or you look at it as like, okay, I'm never going to do that again, and you get stronger, and you train yourself, and you push on, and you make your life better. And that's what I did with my marriages. Yes, marriages, because I had a couple failures.
A couple tries at it.
I had a couple tries at it because it took this guy a while to get his shit straight, to be honest with you. So,
also a huge, life-changing event is happening right now. You get the opportunity to try out for the Tier 1 unit.
Yes. So when I was in Afghanistan, we were doing some training, and one of the he was an old tier, he was at the command. He was actually on Roberts Ridge. He's one of the snipers. Solid dude. And he actually just passed, probably. I think he passed last year, working from for a government agency. And he's like, so you going to try out? And I'm like, absolutely. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. And then he saw me like a couple weeks later. I was like, oh, I just found out I'm actually getting pushed back 6 months to the next class, the one after the next class. And he goes, really? I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to the training detachment to train guys for 6 months, and then I'll get picked up, which I was fine with. Like, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go straight into the training cycle. He comes back a couple weeks later. Or, no, we go to Iraq, and he comes back like 3 weeks before we're about to go home. He's like, hey, bro. He's like, you're in the next training cycle. I was like, what? He's like, me? He's like, yeah. Put in a good word for you. I was like, dude, I just give him the biggest hug. I'm like, man, I love you. So I've been jacking steel this whole time. I mean, and running, as we know from Bud's chapters, I hate running, man. It's not fun on my knees because I was a bigger dude. And, but I was like, man, I got 3 weeks to be ready to pass the screening test. And so I was like, all right, mindset has shifted from lifting to running. Still lifted weights, but I just added running, and that's all I did was run. And, and I passed. So everything worked out.
How long from when you get home until that selection starts?
I want to say 3 weeks.
Okay. So it was,
I found out, I think, a week or two before we left, maybe 3, not long. I mean, I was like, holy crap. And I think I might've done a couple runs there, cause that's all I had time with in country. But when I got home, it was on. It was like, I would marked off my 3 mile run, my route, and I would just start timing myself, pacing myself, sort of researching how to get faster real fast. So I mean, it worked out. And I mean, and this goes back to mindset, to be honest with you. It's just like, all right, you have two choices. You either pass and continue on to what you want to do, or you fail and you don't do it, and you kick yourself in the ass for not doing what you should have done in the first place. So I chose option A.
Kind of mind over matter.
It is a mind over matter. I will always be the guy that says it's your brain. My kids are annoyed with me because of that.
Well, and here again, from an outside looking in, you join the Marines. A lot of folks would look out there and say, "Man, being a Marine, that's awesome," and it is.
It is.
But you wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
Make your way to the SEAL teams. You're in the SEAL teams. You're deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan. You're like, no, this isn't quite enough for me. Next level. It's like, but now you've run out of levels.
Buddy, it's Tom's disease. Terrified of missing stuff. I told you, I got a really bad case of it.
Awesome. Well, we will get into that selection and training process in the next chapter. Anything you want to throw in back on this one? One thing that I think is kind of neat, the nature of these deployments, it sounds like you've got a little more downtime and you and Jason are hanging out.
Yeah, a little more downtime. It wasn't like bang, 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 operation. It was definitely more sporadic. So a lot of lifting weights, a lot of eating a lot of food, movie watching, working out more, stuff like that. But I mean, you're still tweaking gear. You're still doing some training events. You're doing some driving stuff. It just all depends. I
mean, now you're seeing people die. You're really in a harsh environment, even if you're not maybe in the mix as much, but you're civilians that die. Any type of faith coming in at this point?
No faith still. It's so funny. Like I hear people all the time, and I mean, I hear it now because I used to be that guy. It's like, yeah, I don't believe in God, but and I was the same way. But I mean, I believed he was there. I just didn't know how to engage that piece, right? Which is so funny because the devil knows that God's real too.
Well, I think about the adage, there's no atheists in foxholes.
Right.
But there's some agnostics.
Right. And so I remember like being like going into a spot where you're like, okay, this is like going to take someone's house and you find yourself, please keep me alive, God. You're talking to him without even know it by default. Right. Because you don't want to know why? Because you were created by him. Right. It's like, so, Dad, help me out on this one. Dad, come on, man. Like, it's crazy, man. It's the things I see now. I was just a blind fool, to be honest with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Eddie.
All right, buddy. Thank you. See you guys.
Eddie, what do you feel now?
A lot of peace.